Hello and welcome to the Property Business Podcast. I'm James George, and once again, I'm joined by Jonathan Woods and James Hughes. How are you guys?
Yeah,
Yeah,
very good. Had a very productive Monday morning. All good.
yeah, super busy actually this Monday for another four viewings, and just filling up my diary. It's been great. A really good start to the week.
I love watching your Instagrams, boys, and how busy and successful you are. So before we kick off, how do we follow you on Instagram?
Mine is James Hughes Property.
And mine was the underscore London underscore agent, the London agent.
And I am JG_EXP on Instagram. And this week we are talking about door knocking. This was a massive part of my real estate business when I first started. And I know James and Jonathan have had great success as well. So, James, do you want to kick off with your experience with door knocking?
Yeah, I probably had three successes from door knocking. I think when I initially started, it was a case of how am I going to find a listing? I was sending out magic letters, social media, and I had a bit of time at the start. So I thought, bugger it, let's go door knocking. So I had my business cards. I went through the app that we have. It kind of tells you what houses are on the market. So I kind of followed a bit of a route. But then anytime when I saw a board, I would go knock on that house. That vendor was not in, but the neighbour, I knocked on the wrong door. She was selling a flat in 2 months' time, so she invited me in. So that led to a listing. And then on the same journey, I met a builder, got chatting to him. He's like, well, I'm not selling now, but check in with me every once in a while. Checked in with him every month, really. And then 6 months after initially meeting him, he instructed me to sell his house in South Croydon. That then actually led to three more instructions on the back of it. So selling the house in South Croydon, because I do the viewings myself, meet all the buyers. They're very impressed with how we are as agents. That then led to a flat that I've sold in Crystal Palace. And then when I sold that flat in Crystal Palace, one of the buyers there, I've now sold their flat in Croydon. So that's one example. Second example is when you've sold a house on the road. So I live in South Croydon. I sold a house on Lower Addiscombe Road. I sold a house. It had my sold board up on the board. There was a house for sale 10 doors down. So I very politely went and knocked on that door and said, I just sold that house. I've got buyers from that house. I'd love to introduce them to your house. Can I come in and discuss how I can help to sell your house? So yeah, so two good, hopefully, success stories from door knocking there.
Love it. In regards to script, so what would you say if when you first started and you went and knocked on that first door and you randomly knocked on the wrong door? When they opened the door, what did you say?
Yeah, well, as you can probably see, I'm not a very well scripted guy. So it's just a case of having a big smile on your face. Say, look, I'm a local estate agent based locally. I've seen the house is on for sale. I'd love to help. And then see how it goes from there. If they open up, great. See how the conversation goes. Yeah, there's no script. Just knock on the door, big smile on your face. I really want to help to sell your house.
We've talked about it on a previous podcast, but obviously I spent 5 years doing this in the US. We're not allowed to knock on the door of someone who's selling their home. You'd lose your license if you did that. So my experience is different. I'm not allowed to. I love the fact that you can do that. It's definitely something I'm going to do. Jonathan, what's your experience been?
I was going to say, I think that's a really interesting point just about the difference in the US, and something which we take for granted here in the UK is the ability to go out and, in inverted commas, tout for business. Because it's as a new agent starting out in a big shark pool of agents that are all fighting for business, there is so much low-hanging fruit there that isn't selling that you can go after. And that's perfectly fine in whichever way you decide to do it, be it through letters or flyering or door knocking, which we're talking about now. And I think it must be very frustrating, James, I'm sure, of seeing all these lovely homes that aren't selling and you think, I could sell that, and you can't do anything about it. You can't even go and, sort of sell your business to those people until they decide to leave. It
Yeah,
must be
that's it. I
very
suppose
frustrating.
I'm going to talk about how I was successful in door knocking, and I think that can still be very successful here. But when you're first starting, so say for example, you work for a Foxtons and you've been very successful there, and you come over to a company like EXP and you start doing it yourself. You've got to look at how am I best getting business and generating income as quick as possible. And the low hanging fruit will be you want to try and find people that are definitely going to be selling their home. Well, if someone's definitely going to be selling their home if it's on the market. So we'll talk about more about scripts and what you're going to say in a minute and the different ways that you can do it. But I'd say the best place to start is the homes that are already on the market. James and Jonathan, when you have done it,
I was going to say
I was going to go ahead, John.
Just to answer your question in respect to myself. James is a very very confident guy when it comes to this kind of thing, and I think myself certainly it's not something I feel, you wouldn't believe it, but as confident of doing this. And I haven't actually physically gone and knocked on someone's door, but what I did do, and I did do it as a religious thing that I did every single week, was I'd go out on what I call my kind of prospecting walk, which was I'd have a big stack of letters who I'm going to hand out, and most of them were hand delivered, and a load of flyers in a big rucksack. And I used to walk it. Now I do it on a line bike. It didn't exist then, but you can do it walking. I walked 17 miles one day, all around my local area, giving out literally for the whole day. I left in the morning at 8:30 and then get back till it was dark. But the thing with doing that is I was going up and putting these letters through people's doors and putting the flyers, and sometimes people would come to the door. And the first time you're like, oh my God, please don't come to the door. But then actually, no, I want you to come to the door. That's the whole point. So I kind of passively door knocked. I didn't do it but I do, James, that point of having a listing on a road. I'm going down to a place in Streatham later for a survey, and it's just made me think, if I see a sign there, I'm going to go knock on that door and say, by the way, I've just sold me off the road just down the corner, and I've got a load of buyers for it, because I genuinely do. And that's actually a good I think, in a lot more comfortable way, rather than just like, oh, can I sell your home for you? But look, I genuinely have sold this. You can see my board outside that says it's sold, and I've got a bag load of buyers here that want to buy something else. So I think that's a really good one. I'm probably going to give it. Well, if I see a sign on my, I'm going to go at 2:30 today. If I see one, I'll give it a go, and I'll report back on how it went later on.
So that's the script I've got. When I first started, I would go and knock on someone's door and just knocking on, basically just wanting to see if you were looking to sell your home. It would be, hi, I'm James George. I'm a local real estate expert. Just wanted to see if you're looking to move in the next 12 months. And then I realised, even if you've not got a buyer, you should always have a buyer, to be honest, for anything, in my opinion, because you should know local investors who would potentially buy a property. So you should always have a buyer in your back pocket. You should always have someone that, say, for example, it's a 500,000 house and someone's willing to sell it for 400,000 and it just needs a lick of paint to make the house look better. You should always have someone like that in your back pocket. And so I would just knock on doors and just be like, hi, sorry to bother you. I've got a buyer looking for a home in this area. I just want to check if you were looking to move anytime soon. Then if they said no, I'd then be like, oh, okay, just by interest, do you know any of the neighbours who might be looking?
Okay.
And then often they will know, oh, yeah, so-and-so down the road is looking. And so I would just try and keep the conversation going to see if there's anyone else. I would say it's even better if you're like in Jonathan's situation where you actually have a buyer and you actually have another listing that you've maybe just sold or something. Like James, you mentioned that you went and knocked on the door as well. That's even better, because then you're an expert in the area if you've actually sold. So talk about, like Jonathan, you said your confidence about to go and knock on people's doors, especially when you first started. What was interesting, when I became a real estate agent in the US, we went through, it was actually like a few week course, and every Tuesday and Thursday we'd go along, we'd do different things. And one of the first things we did was we talked about door knocking. We'd have to role play in the class, and then we'd have to go out, and every single week we'd say, right, how many doors has everyone knocked? And obviously some people didn't have the confidence to do it. And then people like myself wanted to, have success stories, and I would go out and door knock, and we talk about, Amanda really wants getting bitten by a dog and the random stuff that might happen going out door knocking. But doing it together as a group really pushed you, because someone would come in and go, I've got my first listing from door knocking, and then you'd go, well, if he's got his first property that he's going to be selling, we call them listings in the US. You probably don't call them listings here, do you?
Kind of. There's quite a few like Americanisms coming into a lot of like this world. We're using the word real estate already, so I think that's something which is more in the broker world than on the sort of estate agency side of things. It's interesting you say that, because I think. Oh, sorry, carry on, James.
No, go ahead, Jonathan. Yeah, go ahead.
I was to say, it's interesting when there's a lot of brokers who are starting out now in the UK are usually, not always, but usually very experienced agents that have worked in the corporate world for a long time, myself included. And by definition, most of them have got to manager levels, and therefore doing this kind of thing in the first instance, if you were to ask a branch manager of, I don't know,
Yeah.
Hamptons or wherever it is, right, you're going out door knocking on Friday, the instant reaction to that would be, no, I'm not. I'm not doing that. And I would, I think I had a similar feeling. Like the idea of going out handing out leaflets on a Friday or a Monday morning or whatever it was. I mean, that's considered low-level work for someone who is holding a branch manager, associate director, or director-level job. The difference is, though, is that once it becomes your business and once it's your name above the door and your remuneration, I used to look at it, and every single board I walk past on the street is 10 grand. Now, 10,000 quid is quite a motivator to getting that listing, as we call it. But if you're, only making 5% of that deal, then it's not £10,000, it's 500 quid. And of course, there are a lot more coming at you from various different channels that kind of prospecting, and that's where sometimes I think that a lot of new brokers, they have a slower start or they're not willing to put in what takes the graft to do it, but the results are huge. And that's
What I
what it's all
used to
about
do
mindset
with the team that I had is I'd have newer agents joining, and then I'd have experienced agents sometimes who wanted to grow their business. So they'd come on board and start working with me. And when we got a listing, is we would go out and knock on doors to invite them to the open house. We'll maybe do a whole podcast on open houses one week, because it's something which I know we talked about before. And Jonathan, you've started doing like broker open houses and inviting agents along, but we would invite all the neighbours along when we got a house, and people would then come and see the home for the first time. And it's not something that generally happens here, but what we would do is when we would get the listing, the home to sell, is the first thing we would do, first opportunity for everyone to see the house, is we'd advertise it everywhere that everyone could just come and see the home for a couple of hours. We'd always do a themed open house. So, for example, I've done barbecues to sunset cocktail evenings, done all sorts of different things. But we would then, as a group, go and knock on everyone's doors and just invite them along to the open house. And often that wouldn't necessarily sell the house. What we were doing it was for us to get more business. And then we would often get loads of the neighbours who were often nosy, wanting to see what their neighbour's house looked like. They would come in, you would start chatting to them, because if it was more of an event and they could have a drink or have some nibbles, they would often spend chatting for 30 minutes. And then they'd be like, oh, we're thinking of selling our house. And it might not even be for like a year. But you would get to know all of the neighbours. They would tell you then about if someone else's homes are selling. You would then stay in contact with them, because I think one of the things we should talk about in another podcast is follow-up. Because it's all well and good knocking on someone's door. Like James, you mentioned how you got more business from knocking on people's doors. But if you just go and knock on someone's door once, the chances of them opening the door and saying, yes, I want to sell my home, can you sell it tomorrow, is going to be small. It's often, I'm thinking about selling my home in 6 to 12 months' time. Then it's about staying in touch with them to then hopefully sell it. But when I first started, I would literally pick a neighbourhood, and I would go and knock on every single person's door. And I would just literally be like, are you selling your home? Are you selling your home? Are you selling your home? And then what I would do is in America, they don't have, you don't put the mail through your post through the door. They have mailboxes. And legally, you're not allowed to leave stuff in their mailbox. So everyone always has a door hanger, like a doorknob, on their door. And so we would get these door hangers that you'd leave it on. And because I was British, I themed myself as a British real estate agent. And I had me with a cup of tea holding it. And I made this big thing about being British. And I was just like, if you're thinking about selling your home, I'd love to show you, how I would sell your home for more, etc. And I'd leave it on every single door. And I would get regular calls, especially from British people in California, calling me up from the thing that I left. So one of the things that I'd also say is, is very crucial what information or card or whatever it is you leave,
Yeah.
and try and stand out. That's one of the things that because it's so competitive in the US, is I had to make myself stand out compared to everybody else. So I would say that's another thing you got to think about is try and get your point across in the literature that you leave. If you just leave a business card
Yeah.
that has your name and number on it, they're not going to really call you. But I would say that's another thing for us to talk about another week is making yourself stand out, because obviously you guys
Yeah.
know the difference in what you guys add in value compared to your normal agency. So I think you need to try and get that across in the literature that you've got as well.
Yeah. Yeah. When I started, I was a bit sporadic where I just went door knocking, just having business cards. James Hughes, powered by EXP. No one actually knows what that means. Ashley Whitehouse, who's just joined, he lives in Morden, and we introduced him to a leaflet design company. He has printed out some great leaflets as the local agent. He's open from 24/7, very experienced agent. So he's going door knocking in his local community, hand delivering those leaflets, not targeting houses on the market, but purely to introduce himself to the community. And then I also say to him, as well as doing that, Ashley, make sure that you are in the Facebook local groups, put a little content about you delivering some leaflets. And if anyone sees you outside in the cold, get them to invite you in. So I guess with all of our agents now, because myself and John and you, we've learned what to do, what not to do. We can help agents from day one, do this, do that. So he's been out there as he has a bit more time at the start of his business to focus on that, get into your local community, and also repurpose what you're doing into the local Facebook groups as well.
Yeah, I think it's interesting what you learn through going out and doing these things, and you think, oh goodness, why on earth did I do that? You get a door and you've got nothing to give to the person, and you think, right, now I've got to have something.
Yeah.
And we've learned that as you go along. I think that there's certainly a point just to consider with door knocking, especially in London, is to be sensible about it and understand that there is a safety element to it. Don't go doing it in the dead of night. Maybe, especially if you're female or whatever, maybe tell someone you're going out on a door knocking session so people know that that's what you're doing. So I do think it's important that we're sort of mindful of that we are knocking on people's doors and you are in a big city. I wonder, James, with your experience in the US, whether with that open house thing, did you ever find that you'd get people turning up to these things that shouldn't have turned up to them? Or that, if you're opening, because I can see that that's the thing that some people might have with an open house that's fully open is like, who's turning up at my home? Did you ever get any sort of undesirables turn up? I know
what you're saying. If you think about an open house in a $5 million place, you'd think surely you would get maybe some people coming along wanting to see what they could maybe steal from that house or whatever it is. And the funny thing is, we never had any of that. Now, don't get me wrong, you have to be sensible and you have to say during the home selling process, full stop, don't leave anything that's valuable out for someone to take. But God, yeah, we would sometimes have 100 people coming into a house over a 2-hour period, and the house would just be absolutely packed. And there's only one, often maybe even just one of you there at the front, and you can't watch what everyone's doing. But we've never had an issue with it at all, which is I've never had someone come in that but here I can understand, because it's not. I can understand if you didn't do it the right way here, because it's not normal practice, why there would potentially be concerns from the seller with how it all works.
They work really well with the viewing side of things, and I think in a community where people, like, the difference is that in a lot of smaller communities, people know their neighbours. I don't know necessarily who lives 5 doors down from me, but I think if you're in a slightly more close knit community, it can be quite more, let's say, just a friendly thing to do on an afternoon. But if it's something really nice, I think it'd be good to trial it and let's see what happens. It's just make sure your PI insurance covers enough of it, so then you've got the cover in case of a problem.
Things get nicked.
Yeah. But I think the whole point of sort of the door knock prospecting is that if you're not, you've got to get out of your comfort zone, haven't you? You've got to try and do things that don't necessarily always you feel like it just keeps you a little bit on edge. But what's the upside? The upside is you could get a £10,000 listing. The downside is you get a door slam in your face. So
I know people in the US who have got 50, sales a year from just door knocking, and that is what they do. They go out and they just knock on doors and they put themselves out there, and they'll do it for 6 hours a day and just hustle, 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 and sell 50 homes. And as you say, if you, depending on what area you are, say for example, you sell 700 to £1 million homes, and you're getting 1 to 1.5%, 10 grand, I'd say, Jonathan, depending on where you are in Winchester in London. That's the type of figures you can get. 50 homes, that's 500,000 a year from hustling. Now, don't get me wrong, I didn't want to be door knocking for 6 hours a day, 5 days a week. Once you've built up your portfolio and you start getting lots of referrals, it's not something you want to be, especially in England. I was in California. I was running around often in my shorts and t-shirt, doing my daily exercise by just running around. As you say, sometimes you don't even need to knock on doors because they're going out picking up the kids as you get to them. Oh, hi, just before you go, can I just give you this? Can I just see if you're selling your home or whatever? And whereas here, it's a bit different. If it's cold, wet and raining, you don't want to be going in and out of your car, like walking down the street. But
if you
works.
do turn up when it is raining, and if someone opens your door, that shows them how determined you are that you're out in the cold and the wind and the rain. This is how keen I am to help to sell your house. That's what I would say.
I mean, it's a good
turning up as a drowned rat.
The thing is, it is a strategy, and it's part of all the different strategies. And I think when you're starting your startup business, and people say like, "Oh, I'm 2 months in, I haven't got a listing yet." It's like, well, how much have you actually done to get one? Like, what are you doing? It's not going to just come to you. You've got to get out there and fight for it, and you've got to build a name for yourself. And I think it's very sometimes easy to slip into seeing what other brokers or agents are doing on Instagram and social media, and it looks like everyone's just getting loads of listings and it's easy. And the more time you put into it, the more things come to you. But do I go out now handing out hand delivered leaflets every single week? No, I don't. I probably should, but I need to outsource that because I've got so much going on that I can't do it all myself. But in those early days when you've got 10 hours a day to yourself and you're like, I don't have any viewings, I've got nothing. Well, what are you doing? Get out there and go and knock on some doors. Yeah. That's what this is all about. And I think, but also forgetting sometimes that you've got to keep doing the basics. And if you don't, then you lose the ability to do it. But you've got to remember how you got what got you where you are. And I think it's kind of reminding me, just having this conversation just reminding me, I need to build that back into my business because it's something which I'm not doing as much as or anywhere near as what I was before. So maybe
the truth is people, normal real estate agents out there who are working for a company have got probably enough business that their branch manager's not telling them to go out there and knock on doors. No one's doing it. Social media, generally, even though it's a massive part of it, generally everyone's on social media, and generally most real estate agents should be on there in some form, but no one's door knocking. I put money on that. I put money on no one out there right now in your area is going out knocking on doors. If you went and knocked on every house for sale in your area and you did that once a month, I put money on you'd be on 200k plus a year.
Yeah, there was the Tyrone Ash real estate program, and like it or hate it, but then some of the agents there, it's literally a case of, right, you're ready to go now, go door knocking, and good on them. They literally went round the streets of Manchester up in northwest London, Hampstead, literally door knocking. And I was thinking, they got a bit of stick, but then I was like, good on them.
Yeah, I always think, what's the worst that can happen?
I can understand in some. It is true. I think you've got to do it in the right way. I think if you're out there, wide boy, like gift to the gab car salesman type, banging on doors and jumping over fences, and some people might look at that and go, look at him, he's Jack the Lad. He's kind of like, it depends. But if that's not you and that's not your business and the area that you're in, you don't want to give yourself a reputation of just being like the underbelly type sort of wheeler dealer agent. I think you've got to do it in a professional and advisory way, rather than being a kind of a bit of annoyance or a menace. So I think sometimes.
Well, if you think about it, if someone knocked on your
agents
door,
can come.
But if someone knocked on your door and said, "I'm helping a young family at the moment find a new home," And unfortunately, the home that sold down the road sold before they could see it, but they really want to move into this particular neighbourhood. I just wanted to know, are you looking to sell? If you paint that picture, they're going to go, oh, wow, that's really nice for him to go and do that.
Yeah,
They're not going to slam the door in your face and tell you to F off. Whereas people think of door knocking
that's my point.
Is someone saying, do you need your windows doing or whatever it is, and Del Boy type people knocking on your door. But if you do it a certain way and you look a certain way as well, then then you're going to be absolutely fine.
Yeah, that was my point. I think just what I don't want to be doing is trying to sort of purport of reinforce that kind of sharp suits sort of like shiny suited estate agency gift of the gab knocking on doors. Hey mate, do you want to sell your own kind of look? It's not. But doing it exactly the way you just described, James. Any normal person, the reaction that they should have on that would be. But if you turned up at my door talking like that and it was 9 o'clock at night, I'd probably have a different view of it. Just because it's not the right time.
You have to be respectful of bedtimes, kids' bedtimes, all of that.
Exactly.
I know one of the, you've got to think about not doing it too early. You've also got to think about when's a good time to get them. And often when everyone's just got home, if you go during the day, quite often, if you look at there's no cars in the driveway, I wouldn't bother going knocking on that door because I'd think, for example, that no one was in. Obviously, where I was, you would see if people's door, in Winchester, you'd often see if people's cars are there. London's a bit different because if you park on the street, you don't know. But I'd look to see if there's lights on and stuff. And if it looks like there's no one in, I would just move and go on to the next home. I wouldn't waste my time knocking on doors where it looked like no one was in. But you'd often get a load of people in, just after the school run, for example, maybe, or just when people have got home from work. Cool. Anything else you want to talk about in regards to door knocking, guys?
No.
No, I think we've covered it. I think it's it's something. It's another string to your bow. It's something else to. Certainly, I would say in the first 6 months when you're building up, it should be part of your prospecting. If not fully on the front offensive, but even if it's a passive, like I did, handing out leaflets and letters, and then talking to people in the street and talking to people as they come to their doors. But I think you've got to give it a go, especially if you're struggling for listings. You've got to be out there.
Yeah. And what about successes, guys? Not door knocking, but anything at all in the last week, just to celebrate how well you're doing. Chat about your successes, guys.
Quite a few. Obviously, every week has its challenges as well. It's not always about success, but probably the success that stands out for me last week was renting a house just by Clapham Common at £6,000 a month. Very good overall rental. That client was actually introduced to me, a friend of a friend who follows me on Instagram. I had a bit of fun with that one. I recently bought a new car as well, so I wanted to get the video drone myself driving the car down the driveway, fly over the house, and then kind of cover Clapham Common. So that's an awesome result for me financially. I guess the benefit to the client is that he's dealing with me as an independent lettings agent. How I pitch myself as a lettings agent is more of a kind of portfolio manager, because I do sales and lettings. I'm not here to push you down lettings or sales. Let's look at the asset, let's look at your finances, and then advise accordingly. That is in Clapham, so it needs an additional HMO license. I also am a HMO landlord, so I can advise the client directly, do all of the compliance, and then get a good group of sharers in there, and that's his first time being a landlord. Yeah, so a very good result for me all round.
Cool. Jonathan?
Jay, just before I say about success, I think that's a really good point down with the difference, or the point between being a sales and letting agent at the same time. A lot of clients will get advice from a sales manager and then a lettings manager, are two different departments in the same business, both with their own agendas, meaning that the lettings manager wants to let it and the sales manager wants to sell it. You'll get a certain level of impartiality from very, very good people, but in the majority they're going to look after their own interest. Whereas for you, you're going to be giving the right advice to the client and what they need to do at that particular time, because you'll work in both sides of it, which I think is a really important thing to say. For me, 3 listings last week, which is great. So 3 new on the market.
Well done.
Had a load of viewings last week, and we've got a big full diary this week, which is brilliant. got quite a few in the pipeline that are just stalling, so waiting for that to go through. Hopefully, fingers crossed, should cap this week, so I'll be very, very happy when that happens.
Hey, nice.
We'll talk about
Which month is that? How many months do you have to go before?
That'll be 7 months to the end.
Amazing.
Now.
Awesome.
But we can talk about what capping is for a future podcast. But yeah, that's been a success to me. I've just taken on a listing in Cornwall, which is quite good as well.
Listing in Cornwall.
Here we come.
I'm intrigued. How are you going to sell your listing in Cornwall?
So I've taken this on. I'm going to do some media marketing for it, which we've done. Going to get on social media, and I'm going to partner up with an EXP agent down in Cornwall who's going to help me out selling it as well in terms of being on the ground. So
love it.
Yeah, nice.
It also gives you excuse maybe to go down with the family at some point as well.
Well, yeah, I've got to make that visit down to that listing.
Exactly. Golf. Go to Spain and St Melian golf course when you're down there, and then call it work.
This is a future podcast about the beauties or the benefits of running your own business and running as a limited company. We're going off to business for a trip to Lisbon soon, and going off to Miami and a few other things, which are legitimate business reasons to be travelling, which I think is a great thing to do.
Awesome. Once again, it's been great fun recording the podcast with you guys. If you're interested in starting up your own property business and that will dramatically increase your income, then please reach out to either John, James, or myself. And please do follow the podcast. Give us a review. And if you want us to cover any topics, let us know. And if you want to come on the podcast, we are always looking for people to come on if you're a specialist in any particular area. Boys, have a good week. Have a good Monday. And I'll see you next week.
See you next week.
Speak soon. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.